up to 975 subs. Just picked up one today, sometime today. Alright, let me let him know first. Havasu City. There's not AS, there's AZ. Barstow. Yeah, it sucks. I got a friend who's coming this direction. Coming right this way, but I don't have time to sit. I can't meet up. He has plenty of time, wants to meet up, but I unfortunately I can't. Alright, let's get rolling. Got some fries to snack on the way over. I got 9 more miles left, or about 10 or whatever it is, of Arizona before I'll end up in California. So my minutes of driving at 70 miles an hour are going to be numbered. Done 433 miles so far. Yeah, it's going to be right at 600 miles when I get to Barstow then. Too fast next to other traffic that's moving. You never know when they might suddenly come out. Yeah, almost look like my headlights aren't even on, but I know they are. For one, I know the switch is on, plus I can see them on through my hood mirrors. As dark as that on-ramp seemed, you wouldn't think it were, though. That same horse truck I passed earlier? Probably. In fact, I think I passed him twice. Guess I'll pass him again, and then he'll pass me back up in California, because I don't serving an arrest warrant on somebody there too. Why would they want to hang out over there? Unless they got just doesn't make sense. Make up your mind what you're gonna do. I'm not gonna keep playing these fucking back and forth games with your ass. Get that goddamn off-road light off your truck. of the things I didn't like about being off base in my uniform. There's an incident, Sean, you probably relate to this. When you're off base and you're in uniform, everybody looks at you. It's kind of like sizing you up. They have high expectations of you or whatever, or they scrutinize. You feel like you're getting scrutinized all the time. And I understand that some people just, like especially like women like a guy in uniform, whatever, or people want to show their appreciation or respect. But a lot of us don't want the attention. But just the fact that the uniform is on me that's all it took for people to be like just instantly paying attention to me and everything I was doing. Alright, at the agricultural checkpoint here. Not much going on here. If these guys are pretty quick about it. Usually, as soon as they see the Tyson letterhead on my VOL, they just wave me right on through. Thanks, have a good night. Damn it. Almost thought I was in fifth gear, no, I was in third. I put my BOL up in the windshield, and as soon as he saw the Tyson thing on it, he waved me right on through. Which is common, unless you get someone who's new there and is inexperienced, and then they actually want to look at the BOL. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Tyson doesn't do produce loads. I'm still right here. I don't see anything indicating that you're buffering. Still have a strong 4G signal. back of the trailer, and I see the reefer status thing on the side of it, that's an indication that it could possibly be another JCT driver. Right? Although, it could be dry load too. But that was a plain trailer. It didn't have any logo on the side of it. Needles now, US 95 coming up southbound, which goes down to Quartzsite, Arizona. Coming the other way before a hell of a lot longer. You say it was in Essex when I was leaving the truck stop. Essex is exit 100. So you had already been at least by the 110 or so by the time I got into Cali, and so if I'm at the 145-ish, about 35, so we'll just say no more than 15 miles from here I'll probably run into him. About the 130-ish, 135, 130, yeah, I don't know. Pulling a dry load, so his reefer won't be running. Coming this direction, and I'll probably be passing by him in the next 5 to 10 miles, within the next 10 miles, I think, if he's about the area where I think he was at, because he said he was in Essex when I was leaving, when I was about to leave Lake Havasu. Yeah, he's on his way to Texas. That's cool. So it means they can't recall you now, or what? apparently been with JCT for a year. Had a high hook incident. And I guess he wanted to look at the back of it. When he hit high hooked, his basically the reefer unit ran into the APU fan mounted to the back of his tractor. Nope, nothing on him. And I was like, how you've been driving for a year? How the hell do you high hook a trailer with at least a year of experience? I was like, maybe you shouldn't be driving a truck if you can't. I mean, that's just complete boneheaded. You can feel the tractor going underneath the trailer when it's going under correctly. Boggle my mind that that's even possible. I can see inexperienced, like brand new drivers doing it, but shit, the guy's been with us for a year, and on top of that, you can't at least 6 drivers for that. So, what is a high hook effect? A high hook happens when the kingpin is sitting too high to get into the fifth wheel, and it slides over the top of the fifth wheel instead of into the lockjaw on it. And in the most minor of cases, it just gets trapped on the other side of the fifth wheel. You know, where you can't get the tractor back out from under it, and you have to basically you have to use something to tilt the fifth wheel so it's flat, so you can get it back over, or crank the landing gear down some more to get the fifth wheel sitting higher. Worst case, you do that, and all of a sudden the reefer smacks into the back of the trailer, smacks into the back of the tractor. And in his case, he had the ladder case. I guess he damaged the APU fan or something, and I guess it was leaking. And he was looking at Cody's truck to see how it was supposed to look. And we were both just laughing, shaking our heads, like, how in the hell would someone with a year and a half at least of experience even have a high hook incident? I guess a lot of mega carriers will automatically fire people when that happens, because if you manage to have a high hook incident, it means that you didn't get out to double check that you had no gap before you tried to couple in. Yeah, correct. So, yeah, the fifth wheel went all the way underneath the kingpin. Now, mind you, what I do, because you can feel the tractor squatting underneath the trailer if you're gonna hook it up, if you're not gonna have any problems. You can actually feel the back end and squatting down, and you can feel the resistance. And on top of that, I have a load pressure gauge here that tells me how much pressure is on my suspension system. And I know how much the pressure gauge reads when I have an empty trailer. So if I don't see a minimum of about 20 psi on my load gauge, I'm getting my ass out of the truck and cranking the landing gear up. I'm not even going to try to couple in until I know for sure that the landing gear is off the ground and I'm firmly on that fifth wheel. But a lot of people get taught, look at the gap that's in between the apron and the tires. You know, the drive tires that you're coming in, how large or small the gap is between give you a clue whether you might be too high or might be too low, but that's it. Of course, I had to have a truck going to pass me at the same time I wanted to move over myself. Sometimes we have people who don't even know how to use their airbags. be surprised if the JCT finds out about it sooner or later and fires them, though. hard. I don't want to deal with them. Son, I don't think that helps matters. If you order something like that in a VA medical facility and they know that you have that kind of attitude toward them, do you really think they'd want to give you quality care? Whether or not they have a Hippocratic oath to follow. I'm sure there are people who think that, hey, if you think this way of us, why the hell should I do anything for you? If you're gonna insult me like that. I mean, just food for thought. I mean, I get your sentiment there. I'm not saying that you don't have valid concern there. But if you wear a shirt like that in a VA facility and they see that, I can imagine you sure as hell aren't going to get the best care for them. They're not going to put the best effort they can into you. I'd give you that much for sure. Who have never even served in the military. I'm miles away from the nearest truck, nearest vehicle going the same direction. The nearest traffic behind me is a truck that's at least 2 or 3 miles back. And looking ahead, the nearest traffic is several miles, like at least a good 5 miles up the road. There's not a very large gap at all anywhere except for this one little spot here with the eastbound traffic. Over the top of the tracks here in a second. Thinking Ed, my friend, might be here at this truck stop here. irritate my dad when he was an EMT is people who didn't have health insurance, they would they would always go to the ER for even the stupidest things that should have been seeing a doctor about. I mean, going to a regular doctor visit for. The system gets abused a lot. Too much of people do stuff just because they can, and not because it's the right thing to do. No integrity at all. A stroke. So usually if you have a stroke, one of your eyes, one of the pupils won't dilate, the other one will. One of your pupils usually won't react to changes in light, and the other one will. may not have been able to handle the stroke themselves. That's a common problem. symptoms you had that made you realize that you probably had it?
Joseph Newman, very knowledgeable in history and American politics. Updated
B-52
January
for
8,
sure.
2020. Author has 135 answers and 138.3k answer views. I have 2 answers for this. Lockheed AC-130 gunship.
Yeah, that too.
You don't get the nickname Angel of Death for no reason. This thing is a beast. It has thermal imaging and huge armaments. You don't get away from this. Imagine shooting at soldiers from a Western power, not really minding your own business. All of a sudden, you realize you made the mistake of attacking a radio man, and a few moments later. And then you meet your creator. 2. Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II, aka Warthog. These might not look so big or as scary as the AC-130, but it has a hell of a bite. Just imagine this. You are driving in a car, preparing to go to a position that you thought would be good to ambush American troops. You think you and your buddies are alone, but you're not. Something you can't see sees you. The Reaper, UAV. And once he sees you, someone else will see you. But you don't know this, so you keep driving. Then he finds you. And you are dead. Edit, holy. Freaking. Shish. Wow. 1.5k upvotes and counting. By far the most upvotes I've ever had, as far as I know. Thanks to everyone who upvoted. Edit 2, my first 2000. It's even up to 2.5. Thanks for all the upvotes. Edit 3, we are at 3k plus. Let's do this the opposite of limbo and see how high we can go. 115.6.
Okay, so one that didn't get brought up there was the B-52. I know in Iraq, like the Desert Storm, and also global war on terrorism. Yeah, there are people who are, there are foreign, enemy fighters who would surrender just because they're terrified that they're going to get bombed by B-52s. Because B-52s, you get a few of them together, they can carpet bomb a huge area. Cover a gigantic area and destroy everything in the area that's been hit, and you'd never know if they're even there because they're flying 30,000 feet when they're dropping them. To tech school for C1 for aircraft maintenance. They had some B-52s there for trainer aircraft, and I'd always hear about how huge they are. I'm like, these aren't that huge. They're big, but they're not that wide a body on them, and they're not really any taller or bigger than like in a lot of cargo aircraft. But then you find out that they're actually longer than a lot of aircraft, and then their wingspan is ridiculously long. I saw them. Now I've had friends who worked on B-52s, but I didn't really regularly see them operate myself until I spent time in tankers there, then they have bombers, and then they have fighters, and they rotate the units in and out, and it's not always the same kind of airframe that's in there. It's like the bombers. Sometimes it'll be B2s, and then when they rotate out or something, they might get replaced by a B-52 unit, or the next time around it might be B-1s or something. And then the tankers, though, it's usually all KC-135s. That they rotate the 135 units in and out. And then fighters, like when I was there, they had F-22s from, where were they from? I can't remember if they were from Edwards or Elmendorf. Something like that. Yeah, I think it was one of those two bases. I thought it was Edwards, though. F-22's there, and then they had the B-52 unit there when I was there. And man, I remember we were working out of the fuel cell hangar because we had one of our airplanes in the hangar getting work done, and we parked. Not really much. Wasn't really many places where you could park your maintenance vehicles. I didn't watch those B-52s coming from the end of the runway trying to taxi back over to where their parking area is, and holy shit, man, them fucking wings are obscenely long. And then they have those pogo or those outrigger landing gear on the wingtips. So you got to watch out for those. They need a lot of clearance. I think they're like 260 foot long wingspan or something like that, if I remember right. And they were sticking out so far that they had to go real slowly past the hangar we work out of, and because it was congested there, and we had to be careful. We'd sometimes even have to move our vehicles so the aircraft would get by us. Thunder was the name of an operation. I just can't remember what it, which conflict that was and where and all that. C-17 is, I think, 160 feet. And KC-135s, if I remember right, are 100, or maybe I'm mixing them up. Maybe it's KC-135s or 160, I can't remember. C-130s, if I remember right, are like 132 feet 7 inches or some crap like that. Unless I'm mixing that up with the C-141. I worked on both 130s and 141s. I just can't remember. No, I think 141's had a longer one, wingspan. Yeah, I'm a retired Air Force aircraft mechanic. Did 4 years active duty, and then I spent the rest of my career, almost all of the rest of my career, as a dual status civilian/reserve technician. I think it was linebacker 1 and linebacker 2. Now, because I remember reading about that when I was going through basic training. That was one of the things that we were supposed to learn. And what the hell's this guy doing? Some guy walking on the shoulder there. Yeah, I think linebacker 1 and linebacker 2 were bombing campaigns with the B-52s, and I think that's, if I remember right, I think that might have been what got the North Vietnamese to negotiate. Of course, that's always something I can always queue up to listen to.
Operation Rolling Thunder, Wikipedia. Operation Rolling Thunder. Part of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
F-105 Thunder Chiefs radar bombing at the instruction of a B-66 leader. Date: the 2nd of March 1965 to the 2nd of November 1968. Location: over North Vietnam. Result: strategic U.S. failure. Belligerents: United States, South Vietnam, North Vietnam, China, North Korea. Commanders and leaders: Joseph H. Moore, William W. Momeyer, George S. Brown, Nguyen Sao KY. Phum The Thai, Air Defense. Nguyen Van Tien, Air Force. Casualties and losses. U.S. 1,054 killed, wounded or captured. 922 aircraft lost. South Vietnam, unknown. North Vietnam, 30,000. North Korea, 14 pilots killed. V. T. E. Military engagements during the Vietnam War. Guerrilla phase. Laos. Chopper. Sunrise. Palace bombing. First Ap back. Go Kong. Keep Hua. 34A. Long Din. Keen Long. Hue Thang 202. USNS Card. Nam Dong. And Lao. Bin Za. Camp Holloway. Keenan. Song Bay. Ba Jia. Dong Zoai. American Intervention 1965. Starlight. Piranha. And Nin. Play Me. Hump. Gang Toy. First Bao Bang. Bushmaster 2. Ia Drang. Harvest Moon. 1966. Marauder. Crimp. Van Buren. Masher, White Wing. Double Eagle. Mastiff. Sui Bong Trang. New York. Harrison. Cocoa Beach. Utah. Silver City. Assau. Oregon. Texas. Lincoln. Fillmore. Jack
What
State.
is this shit?
Nudist
Tell us
Uprising.
about the damn thing.
Texicam Mai. Georgia. Birmingham. Operation Rolling Thunder was the title of a gradual and sustained aerial bombardment campaign conducted by the United States, U.S. 2nd Air Division, later 7th Air Force, U.S. Navy, and Republic of Vietnam Air Force, VNAF, against the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, North Vietnam, from 2 March 1965 until 2 November 1968 during the Vietnam War. The four objectives of the operation, which evolved over time, were to boost the sagging morale of the Saigon regime in the Republic of Vietnam, to persuade North Vietnam to cease its support for the communist insurgency in South Vietnam without sending ground forces into communist North Vietnam, to destroy North Vietnam's transportation system, industrial base, and air defenses, and to halt the flow of men and material into South Vietnam. Attainment of these objectives was made difficult by both the restraints imposed upon the U.S. and its allies by Cold War exigencies, and by the military aid and assistance received by North Vietnam from its communist allies, the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China and North Korea. The operation became the most intense air-ground battle waged during the Cold War period. It was the most difficult such campaign fought by the United States since the aerial bombardment of Germany during World War II. Supported by communist allies, North Vietnam fielded a potent mixture of sophisticated air-to-air and surface-to-air weapons that created one of the most effective air defenses ever faced by American military aviators. Contents: 1. Gradually escalating action. 1.1 Background. 1.2 Implementation. 2. Over the North. 2.1 Strategic Persuasion. 2.2 Changing priorities and pole strikes. 3. Reactions. 3.1 Problems. 3.2 People's War in the Air. 4. Biggest shooting gallery on Earth. 4.1 SAMs and Wild Weasels. 4.2 MiGs and Interdiction. 5. End of the line. 5.1 Opposition. 5.2 Conclusions. 6. Legacy. 7. See also. 8. Notes. 9. References. 9.1 Citations. 9.2 Sources. 9.2.1 Published government documents. 9.2.2 Document collections. 9.2.3 Biographies and memoirs. 9.2.4 Secondary sources. 10 External links. Gradually escalating action. Further information on the origins of American involvement in Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin incident. Background. In response to President Ngo Dinh Diem's abrogation of the 1956 reunification election and suppression of communists during the late 1950s, Hanoi had begun sending arms and material to the guerrillas of the National Front for the Liberation of South Vietnam, NLF, who were fighting an insurgency to topple the American-supported Saigon government. To combat the NLF and to shore up the government in the South, the U.S. initially delivered monetary aid, military advisors, and supplies. Between 1957 and 1963, the U.S. found itself committed, through its acceptance of the policy of containment and belief in the domino theory, to defending South Vietnam from what it saw as expansive communist aggression. U.S. policy was for a time dictated by its perception of improvement in the Saigon government. No further commitment by the Americans would occur without tangible proof of the regime's survivability. Events in Vietnam, however, outpaced this plan. By the beginning of 1965, the policy was reversed in the belief that without further American action the Saigon government could not survive. As late as 8 February, however, in a cable to U.S. Ambassador to South Vietnam Maxwell Taylor, Johnson stressed that the paramount goal of a bombing campaign would be to boost Saigon's morale, not to influence Hanoi, expressing hope that the building of a minimum government will benefit by assurances from us to the highest levels of the South Vietnamese government that we intend to take continuing action. Questions then arose among the U.S. administration and military leadership as to the best method by which Hanoi, the perceived locus of the insurgency, could be dissuaded from its course of action. The answer seemed to lie in the application of air power. By 1964, most of the civilians surrounding President Lyndon B. Johnson shared the Joint Chiefs of Staff's collective faith in the efficacy of strategic bombing to one degree or another. They reasoned that a small nation like North Vietnam, with a tiny industrial base that was just emerging after the First Indochina War, would be reluctant to risk its newfound economic viability to support the insurgency in the South. Constantly affecting this decision-making process were fears of possible counter-moves or outright intervention by the Soviet Union, China, or both. The civilians and the military were divided, however, on the manner of affecting Hanoi's will to support the southern insurgency. The civilians thought in terms of changing the regime's behavior while the military men were more concerned with breaking its will. In August 1964, as a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, in which U.S. naval vessels claimed to have been attacked by North Vietnamese patrol boats, President Johnson ordered retaliatory airstrikes, Operation Pierce Arrow, launched against the North. This did not, however, satisfy the military chiefs, who demanded a wider and more aggressive campaign. Implementation. In March 1906 was published at the end of August as CINCPAC OB 30 and selected based on a criterion system considering a. Reducing North Vietnamese support of communist operations in Laos and South Vietnam, b. Limiting North Vietnamese capability to continue as an industrially viable state, Chinese or Soviets. Westmoreland referred to an almost paranoid fear of by keeping a list George Bundy on 29 November 1964, with a more moderate target list, which the Joint Chiefs opposed. No action was taken while these, and other, plans were considered. But matters came to a head with the attack on Camp Holloway on 7 February 1965, which demanded immediate action, and resulted in a reprisal raid known as Operation Flaming Dart. A sapper raid against an American enlisted men's billet at Kien Hon on the 10th led to Flaming Dart 2. These small-scale operations were launched against the southern region of the country, where the bulk of North Vietnam's ground forces and supply dumps were located. F-105Ds refueling en route to North Vietnam in 1965. These actions led to the plans for a sustained air campaign being reconsidered. On 13 February a new plan was approved and given the name Rolling Thunder, merging targets and priorities from the lists produced by the Bundys and the JSC. This campaign was not aimed at specific actions on the part of the North Vietnamese but was intended as a larger response to the growing hostilities as a whole. Although some within the administration believed that the campaign would be costly, and that it might not work, they reasoned that it was an acceptable risk, especially when considered against the alternative of introducing American combat troops. Rolling Thunder called for an 8-week air campaign consistent with the restrictions imposed by that Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert S. McNamara. If the insurgency continued with DRB support, strikes against the DRB would be extended with intensified efforts against targets north of the 19th parallel. It was believed that selective pressure, controlled by Washington, combined with diplomatic overtures, would prevail and compel Hanoi to end its aggression. The military was still not satisfied, since, for the time being, the bombing campaign was to be limited to targets below the 19th parallel, each of which would have to be cleared individually by the President and McNamara. The first mission of the new operation was launched on 2 March against an ammunition storage area near Zone Bang. On the same day, 19 VNAFA-1 Skyraiders struck the Quang Ki Naval Base. The Americans were shocked when 6 of their aircraft were shot down during the mission. 5 of the downed crewmen were rescued, but it was a portent of things to come. Over the north. Strategic persuasion. Under the doctrine of gradualism, in which threatening destruction would serve as a more influential signal of American determination than destruction itself, it was thought better to hold important targets hostage by bombing trivial ones. From the beginning of Rolling Thunder, Washington dictated which targets would be struck, the day and hour of the attack, the number and types of aircraft and the tonnages and types of ordnance utilized, and sometimes even the direction of the attack. Airstrikes were strictly forbidden within 30 nautical miles, 60 km, of Hanoi and within 10 nautical miles, 19 km, of the port of Haiphong. A 30-mile buffer zone also extended along the length of the Chinese frontier. According to U.S. Air Force historian Earl Tilford, targeting bore little resemblance to reality in that the sequence of attacks was uncoordinated and the targets were approved randomly, even illogically. The North's airfields, which, according to any rational targeting policy, should have been hit first in the campaign, were also off limits. A U.S. Navy Douglas A-4 Skyhawk attacking a train in North Vietnam with a Zuni rocket. Although some of these restrictions were later loosened or rescinded, Johnson, with McNamara's support, kept a tight rein on the campaign, which continuously infuriated the American military commanders, right-wing members of Congress, and even some within the administration itself. One of the primary objectives of the operation, at least to the military, should have been the closure of Haiphong and other ports by aerial mining, thereby slowing or halting the flow of seaborne supplies entering the north. President Johnson refused to take such a provocative action, however, and such an operation was not implemented until 1972. There was also little consultation between Johnson and the military chiefs during the target selection process. Even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Earl G. Wheeler, was not present for most of the critical discussions of 1965 and participated only occasionally thereafter. Route Package Organization. The majority of strikes during Rolling Thunder were launched from 4 air bases, in Thailand, Korat, Takli, Udon Thani, and Ubon. The aircraft refueled from aerial tankers over Laos before flying onto their targets in the DRB. After attacking their targets, usually by dive bombing, the strike forces would either fly directly back to Thailand or exit over the relatively safe waters of the Gulf of Tonkin. It was quickly decided that, in order to limit airspace conflicts between Air Force and Naval Strike Forces, North Vietnam was divided into 6 target regions called route packages, each of which was assigned to either the Air Force or Navy and into which the other was forbidden to intrude. A-4E Skyhawks attacking Phuong Dinh Bridge in 1967. Navy strikes were launched from the aircraft carriers of Task Force 77, cruising off the North Vietnamese coast at Yankee Station. Naval aircraft, which had shorter ranges and carried lighter bomb loads than their Air Force counterparts, approached their targets from seaward with the majority of their strikes flown against coastal targets. On 3 April the Joint Chiefs persuaded McNamara and Johnson to launch a 4-week attack on North Vietnam's lines of communications, which would isolate the country from its overland sources of supply in China and the Soviet Union. About 1/3 of the North's imports came down the Northeast Railroad from China, while the remaining 2/3 came by sea through Haiphong and other ports. For the first time in the campaign, targets were to be chosen for their significance. During the 4 weeks, 26 bridges and 7 ferries were destroyed. Other targets included the extensive North Vietnamese radar system, barracks, and ammunition depots. The panhandle of southern North Vietnam remained the primary focus of operations, and total sorties flown there rose from 3,600 in April to 4,000 in May. slowly moving away from the destruction of fixed targets. Armed reconnaissance missions, in which small formations of aircraft patrolled highways, railroads, and rivers, searching for targets of opportunity, were authorized. These missions increased from 2 to 200 sorties per week by the end of 1965. Eventually, armed reconnaissance missions constituted 75% of the total bombing effort, in part because the system through which fixed targets were requested, selected, and authorized was so complicated and unwieldy. Changing priorities in pole strikes. If Rolling Thunder was supposed to send signals to Hanoi to desist in its actions, it did not seem to be working. On 8 April, responding to requests for peace negotiations, North Vietnamese Premier Pham Van Dong stated that they could only begin when the bombing was halted. The U.S. had removed all of its troops from the south. The Saigon government recognized the demands of the NLF, and it was agreed that the reunification of Vietnam would be settled by the Vietnamese themselves. As part of a large attack on the Thanh Hoa Bridge on 3 April, the BPAF first appeared as two flights of 4 McCoy and Gurevich MiG-17s launched from Noi Bai Air Base and shot down an F-8 Crusader, while losing just one of their own aircraft, written off when it landed on a riverbed after running short of fuel. A repeat the next day resulted in a classic dogfight with F-100 Super Sabres and F-105s fighting with more MiG-17s. In total, the USAF lost 11 aircraft to air and ground forces, while the BPAF lost 3 of their fighters.
That's it.
The entire complexion of the American effort was altered on 8 March 1965 when 3,500 U.S. Marines came ashore at Da Nang, ostensibly to defend the southern airfields committed to prosecuting Rolling Thunder. The mission of the ground forces was expanded to combat operations, and the aerial campaign became a secondary operation, overwhelmed by troop deployments and the escalation of ground operations in South Vietnam. Until the third week of April, Rolling Thunder had enjoyed at least equal status with air missions conducted in the South. After that time, strikes that interfered with requirements for the southern battlefield were either cut back or canceled. An F-105D hit by an SA-2 missile. On 5 April 1965, U.S. reconnaissance discovered that the North Vietnamese were constructing positions for what could only be surface-to-air missile SAM batteries. The Air Force and Navy then filed a joint appeal to Washington for permission to strike the sites, but they were refused since most of the sites were near the restricted urban areas. Then, on 24 July, an F-4 was shot down by a SA-2 guideline missile. 3 days later, a one-time strike was authorized against the 2 offending missile sites. The Americans, however, fell for an elaborate trap when the sites turned out to be dummies surrounded by anti-aircraft artillery defenses. One American pilot described the action which followed as looking like the end of the world. 6 of the strike craft were destroyed, 2 of the pilots were killed, 1 missing, 2 captured, and 1 rescued during the ambush. On 29 June 1965, airstrikes against the North's petroleum, oil, and lubricants pole storage areas were authorized by Johnson. The American military had advocated such strikes since the inception of the operation, believing that to deny North Vietnam its pole would cause its military effort to grind to a halt. At first, the strikes appeared highly successful, destroying tank farms near Hanoi and Haiphong and leading the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to estimate that 70% of North Vietnam's oil facilities had been destroyed for the loss of 43 aircraft. The loss of the oil storage tank farms and refineries proved to be only a short-term inconvenience for North Vietnam, however, since Hanoi had anticipated just such a campaign and had during that time dispersed the majority of its pole stocks in 50-gallon drums across the length of the country. The pole attacks were halted on 4 September, after U.S. intelligence admitted that there was no evidence yet of any shortages of pole in North Vietnam. By 24 December 1965, 170 U.S. aircraft had been lost during the campaign, 85 Air Force, 94 Navy, and 1 Marine Corps. 8 BNAF aircraft had also been lost. Air Force aircrews had flown 25,971 sorties and dropped 32,063 tons of bombs. Naval aviators had flown 28,168 sorties and dropped 11,144 tons. The BNAF had contributed 682 missions with unknown ordnance tonnages. Reactions. Problems. Rolling Thunder exposed many problems within the American military services committed to it and tended to exacerbate others. A key inter-service issue, and one which was not solved until 1968, was the command and control arrangement in Southeast Asia. The Air Force's 2nd Air Division, replaced by the 7th Air Force on 1 April 1966, was ostensibly responsible for aerial operations over North and South Vietnam. It was subordinate, however, to MACV and its commander, U.S. Army General William C. Westmoreland, who tended to see his problems centered in the South. The U.S. 7th 13th Air Force, based in Thailand, which carried out the majority of the Air Force's strikes in North Vietnam, had a dual command structure. It reported to the 7th on operational matters and to the 13th Air Force, whose headquarters was in the Philippines, for logistical and administrative concerns. These command and control complexities grew even more tangled with the division of the aerial effort into 4 competing operational areas, those in South Vietnam, North Vietnam, and Laos, both North and South. The Navy's Task Force 77 took its orders via 7th Fleet from CINCPAC, a Navy admiral based in Honolulu, through his subordinate, the Air Force Commander of Pacific Air Forces (PACAF). Due to their influence, the Navy could not be persuaded to integrate its air operations over North Vietnam with those of the Air Force. General William Momeyer, commander of the 7th, had the impression that CINCPAC and PACAF wanted to keep the Thai-based aircraft out of his hands. By denying Momeyer, they were really denying Westmoreland and keeping air operations against the DRV under their control. To complicate matters, the U.S. ambassadors to Thailand, Graham Martin, and Laos, William H. Sullivan, exerted undue influence over operational and command arrangements. This bizarre command structure went against the grain of the Air Force's single air manager concept, which dictated that one commander was to control and coordinate all aircraft within a combat theater. The chain through which operational strike requests had to flow gave some indication of the growing overcomplexity of the campaign. Requests for airstrikes originated with the 2nd Air Division and Task Force 77 in Vietnam and then proceeded to CINCPAC, who in turn reported to his superiors, the Joint Chiefs, at the Pentagon. After input from the State Department and the CIA, the requests then proceeded to the White House, where the President and his Tuesday cabinet made decisions on the strike requests on a weekly basis. U.S. Navy A-6A Intruder all-weather bombers, in 1968. Another problem exposed by Rolling Thunder was the unpreparedness of the Air Force for the operations it was undertaking. Its aircraft had been designed and its pilots trained for strategic operations against the Soviet Union, for nuclear, not conventional war. The new campaign exposed years of neglect in conventional tactics, while aircraft capabilities and armament were ill-suited to the task at hand. The Air Force was also embarrassed by the fact that the Navy was better prepared. It possessed the only all-weather bomber in the U.S. inventory in the new A-6 Intruder and was also responsible for the development of the F-4 Phantom fighter bomber, which became ubiquitous during the Vietnam War. Once air-to-air combat began over North Vietnam, the Air Force was again found lacking. The mainstay missiles of the air war turned out to be the Navy-developed AIM-9 Sidewinder and AIM-7 Sparrow, not its own AIM-4 Falcon. The Air Force continuously opposed adapting to the war in Southeast Asia, since its leadership believed that it was an aberration that would be quickly resolved. It could then turn its attention, and its more modern weapons, against the greater threat posed by the Soviet Union. None in the Air Force High Command foresaw that the war would drag on for nearly a decade. The Air Force did possess an aircraft which had an all-weather capability, radar-guided bombing equipment, and awesome destructive potential, the B-52 Stratofortress. The civilian administration, however, never considered utilizing the big bombers, whose operations remained under the control of the Strategic Air Command, very far north of the DMZ, believing that it was too overt an escalation. Air Force Chief of Staff John P. McConnell also opposed sending the bombers into the air defense environment in the north and limited B-52 strikes to Route Package 1. Compounding these issues was the one-year rotation policy adopted by the Pentagon in Southeast Asia. Although the first aircrews arriving in theater were highly experienced, the rapidly growing tempo and ever-expanding length of the operation demanded more personnel. This exacerbated a growing lack of experienced aircrews. This dilemma was further compounded by an Air Force policy which dictated universal pilot training while proscribing involuntary second combat tours, which combined, had the effect of rotating personnel to different aircraft. Conversely, the Navy tended to maintain its air crews within the same community for the duration of their careers, thereby retaining their expertise but also incurring greater losses among experienced crews undergoing multiple combat tours. Another factor was the weather within the operational theater. The cyclical monsoon patterns meant that the weather was deplorable for flight operations 8 months of the year, from late September to early May, when rain and fog tended to conceal targets. Lack of adequate all-weather and night bombing capability made it necessary for the majority of U.S. missions to be conducted during daylight hours, thereby easing the burden on the air defense forces of North Vietnam. According to Budiansky, captured documents showed that the North Vietnamese had at least 30 to 45 minutes warning of 80 to 90% of Rolling Thunder missions. The North Vietnamese Signals Intelligence staff of 5,000 proved adept at exploiting traffic analysis as NSA was. Every U.S. bombing mission was preceded by an upsurge of traffic involving logistics, ordnance loading, weather flights, and aerial refueling tankers, and even if none of the content of the signals was readable, the pattern was a dead giveaway. Additionally, nearly all radio communications of the U.S. air operations used unencrypted tactical voice. People's War in the Air. The Hanoi Pole facility burning after it was attacked by the U.S. Air Force on 29 June 1966. Before Rolling Thunder even began, the North Vietnamese leadership knew what was coming. It issued a February 1965 directive to the military and the population to maintain communication and transportation and to expect the complete destruction of the entire country, including Hanoi and Haiphong. The communist leadership declared, a people's war against the air war of destruction, each citizen is a soldier, each village, street, and plant a fortress on the anti-American battlefront. All except those deemed truly indispensable to the life of the capital were evacuated to the countryside. By 1967, Hanoi's population had been reduced by half. Since gaining air superiority over U.S. forces was out of the question, the Northern leadership decided to implement a policy of air deniability. At the beginning of the campaign, North Vietnam possessed approximately 1,500 anti-aircraft weapons, most of which were of the light 37 and 57 mm variety. Within 1 year, however, the U.S. estimated that the number had grown to over 5,000 guns, including 85 and 100 mm radar-directed weapons. That estimate was later revised downward from a high of 7,000 in early 1967 to less than 1,000 by 1972. Regardless, during Rolling Thunder, 80% of U.S. aircraft losses were attributed to anti-aircraft fire. Backing up the guns were the fighter aircraft of the North Vietnamese Air Force, which originally consisted of only 53 MiG-17 fighter aircraft. Though considered antiquated by the Americans when compared to their supersonic jets, the North Vietnamese turned their aircraft's weaknesses into strengths. They were fast enough for hit-and-run ambush operations, and they were also maneuverable enough to shock the American fighter community by shooting down more advanced F-8 Crusaders and F-105 Thunderchiefs, which had to quickly develop new tactics. The newer missile-armed F-4 Phantom would become the Americans' primary dogfighting platform. The simple appearance of MiGs could often accomplish their mission by causing American pilots to jettison their bomb loads as a defensive measure. In 1966, the MiG-17 were joined by more modern Soviet-built McCoy and Gurevich MiG-21s, which could fight on a more equal footing with the American aircraft. By 1967, the North Vietnamese Air Force was maintaining an interceptor force of 100 aircraft, many of which were based on Chinese airfields and out of reach of American air attack. The northern economy was decentralized for its protection, and large factories, located in the heavily populated Red River Delta region, were broken up and scattered into caves and small villages throughout the countryside. In the more heavily bombed southern panhandle, entire villages moved into tunnel complexes for the duration. Food shortages in North Vietnam became widespread, especially in the urban areas, as rice farmers went into the military or volunteered for service repairing bomb damage. When the nation's transportation system came under attack, destroyed bridges were repaired or replaced by dirt forts, ferries, and underwater or pontoon bridges. The system proved to be durable, well-built, easily repaired, and practically impossible to shut down. Perhaps North Vietnam's ultimate resource was its population. During 1965, 97,000 North Vietnamese civilians volunteered to work full-time in repairing the damage inflicted by U.S. bombs. Another 370,000 minus 500,000 civilians work part-time. When the nation's lines of communication came under attack, railroad supply trains and truck convoys were split into smaller elements which traveled only at night. The logistical effort was supported by citizens on sampans, driving carts, pushing wheelbarrows, or man-portering supplies on their backs to keep the war effort going. They were motivated by slogans like, "Each kilogram of goods is a bullet shot into the head of the American pirates." Biggest shooting gallery on Earth. Sams and Wild Weasels. Between 1964 and early 1965, the Vietnamese had nothing to threaten American pilots in the air. U.S. aircraft flew at an altitude of 4-5 kilometers, and the Vietnamese anti-aircraft guns were unable to reach them. However, after an S-75 shot down some U.S. aircraft, the U.S. bombers began to descend below 3 kilometers. This brought them within the reach of Vietnamese anti-aircraft guns. On July 24, 1965, 4 U.S. Air Force McDonnell F-4C Phantoms took part in an airstrike against the Dien Bien Phu munitions storage depot in the Lang Khai munitions factory west of Hanoi. 1 was shot down and 3 were damaged by SAW-2 missiles. This was the first time that U.S. aircraft had been attacked by SAMs. After 2 days, President Johnson gave the order to attack all known SAW-2 positions, which had also been discovered outside the 30-mile exclusion zone. On the morning of July 27, 48 F-105s were to participate in the strike designated Operation Spring High. But the Vietnamese knew that U.S. aircraft were coming and set up many 23mm and 37mm anti-aircraft guns at the site. These anti-aircraft guns were lethal at close range. The Vietnamese shot down 6 aircraft, and more than half of the remaining U.S. aircraft suffered damage from ground fire. Both SAM sites were devoid of missiles and equipment, as the Vietnamese had substituted white-painted bundles of bamboo for the fake SAW-2s. The U.S. strike had destroyed 2 worthless targets for the loss of 6 aircraft and 5 pilots. North Vietnam's deployment of SAMs forced American pilots to make hard choices, either approach targets at higher altitudes to avoid anti-aircraft fire and become prey to SAMs, or fly lower to avoid the missiles and become the target of anti-aircraft batteries. Due to altered tactics and the increased use of electronic radar jamming, the record of SAM kills decreased over time. U.S. claimed missile success rate fell from 1 kill in 30 launches to less than 1 kill in 50. A USAF Iron Hand SAM suppression team late in the war. The nature of the gradual escalation had given Hanoi time to adapt to the situation. By 1967, North Vietnam had formed an estimated 25 SAM battalions, with 6 missile launchers each, which rotated among approximately 150 sites. With the assistance of the Soviet Union, the North Vietnamese had also quickly integrated an early warning radar system of more than 200 facilities which covered the entire country, tracking incoming U.S. raids, and then coordinating SAMs, anti-aircraft batteries, and MiGs to attack them. During 1967, U.S. losses totaled 248 aircraft, 145 Air Force, 102 Navy, and 1 Marine Corps. To survive in this ever more lethal air defense zone, the U.S. had to adopt newer, more specialized tactics. Large-scale strikes, known as force packages in the Air Force, and multi-carrier, Alpha strikes by the Navy, were assigned numerous support aircraft to protect the fighter bombers. First into the target areas were specialized Iron Hand flak suppression missions. These consisted of F-105 Wild Weasel Hunter killer teams configured with sophisticated electronic equipment to detect and locate the emissions associated with SAM guidance and control radars. The Wild Weasels also carried electronic countermeasures (ECM) equipment to protect themselves. They directed flak suppression strikes and carried AGM-45 Shrike anti-radiation missiles, another Navy development, which homed in on the radar systems of the SAMs. The SAW-2 had greater range than the Shrike, but if the Shrike was launched and the radar operator stayed on the air, the American missile would home in on the signal and destroy the radar source. A sophisticated cat-and-mouse game then ensued between North Vietnamese radar operators and the Wild Weasel pilots. U.S. Navy A-7B Corsairs armed with Shrike anti-radiation missiles, 1969. Next came the bomb-laden strike aircraft protected by escort fighters, combat air patrol or MiGCAP, and electronic jamming aircraft to degrade enemy radar. New ECM devices had hurriedly been deployed to protect aircraft from missile attacks, but they remained subject to frequent breakdowns because of climate conditions in Southeast Asia. Also included in the missions were KC-135 aerial tankers and search and rescue (SAR) helicopters, which were, in turn, protected by propeller-driven A-1 escorts.
Really?
The Vietnamese were able to adapt to some of these tactics. The USSR upgraded the SA-2 radar several times to improve ECM, electronic countermeasures resistance. They also introduced a passive guidance mode, whereby the tracking radar could lock on the jamming signal itself and guide missiles directly towards the jamming source. This also meant the SAM site's tracking radar could be turned off, which prevented Shrikes from homing in on it. Some new tactics were developed to combat the Shrike. One of them was to point the radar to the side and then turn it off briefly. Since the AGM-45 Shrike was a
fucking idiot. Is there a point to that? Hello. About quarter past 12. So I'm a little over 30 miles out now from I-15. So yeah, right around 12:15ish. I'd prefer the truck because I'm not sleeping on some damn air mattress. Whatever works. If you want to get a little rest and then show up a little later, it doesn't matter. I have to be there for 10 hours, so doesn't matter. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. All right, we'll do. Okay, keep in mind though, I gotta leave around 11ish, so I don't have a lot of time I can burn after I get up. We'll see. So I'm feeling. I'm not that. I mean, I'm not even. I can't even think about food right now. Okay. I love you too. Okay. Hey, how are you? I'm. Yeah. I never knew that. Okay. All right. Love you too. Bye. Alright. So basically, in a nutshell, Rolling Thunder was nothing but a bunch of lessons learned, it sounds like. Of how not to do things. Or how to the right equipment. I vaguely remember something about the Gulf of Tonkin. I don't remember exact details of what happened here, though, or what supposedly happened. Exit 23, Fort Katy Road. Means I am 23 miles away from I-15. Of us providing training and support to, like, logistics support, whatever, to the South Vietnamese and their kind of like their civil war with the North, trying to prevent communism. Well, then I guess the Gulf of Tonkin incident, I guess, is what provoked us into doing more than just providing training, support, whatever kind of stuff for the South. Is that what it's about? tents out in the, like out in the forest and stuff. And they do it. They're building. It's military vets that do that too. Like especially guys just like you, Sean, who have PTSD, or or because they get worried that they're going to harm somebody they love on accident. And some people, there are some of them who consciously choose to live out in the mountains in a tent. That way, they're not anywhere near any humans, and if they have any PTSD outbursts, whatever, there's nobody around that they can harm. Right here in Barstow, in fact, it's not that bad. Parking over here on the east side of town, because that's this end of town is where Dora's at right now. even the bidets they have there put other bidets to shame. No, I'm talking about wind speed here. It's at 65 degrees at the moment. But I feel like I'm getting high teens to 20-ish perhaps wind speed here hitting me. Gusts that are down, so it's making it a challenge to keep the truck in the middle of the lane. open over here at Pilot. Open over at TA too, I think. Come on, police officer. Come by so I can move over. Thank you. Yeah, I think I might be able to park over by that sign over there, right in front of, straight ahead, to the left of the building. Let's see if it's, yeah, I think there might, yeah, I think there's usually room for more trucks over there than what I see parked over there. This end. Oh yeah, that guy over on the end, there's a reefer truck too. I could also park it over, yeah, how about over here? Up in the corner. I'm lined up right with where I want to be. So I remembered I saw like a curve or yeah, an apex, whatever, on the of the fence, and I wanted to make sure I knew where it was at in relation to me. Okay, that's the end of this shift. Should be right at around 600. Yeah, 606. And it's got about 70 or so, whatever it is, to go from here to Rialto. Got an hour and 27 minutes left on my drive clock, so yeah, I probably had just enough to make it to Rialto if I really wanted to go straight down there. But obviously, when my wife and kids are staying with a friend here in town, why would I want to go past here? So yeah, and even if they were at the house, I'd just stay at the house and then sleep in my own bed tonight and then go deliver off a fresh clock from 30 miles closer than here. So all right, so yeah, I'm in Barstow, California for anybody like, where are we at? Yeah. All right, yeah. At the end of the shift, I started my day in Grants, New Mexico. I don't know if my other stream stayed on or if it got blocked, but you guys can check that out if anybody didn't already see that, or just there was some good sunset view there, and what was that? I think about 5.5 hours into that video. Yeah, I remember I was looking at my clock. So if you want to get good sunset shots, 5.5 hours into the other stream, if it is available still, get some nice sunset there in between Seligman and Kingman, Arizona. Anyway, yeah, I'll end up leaving here around 11:30 ish. I'm gonna guess. That way gives me time to get over. Pre-trip, get over there. Gotta top off my reefer unit, so I have a full tank of fuel for whatever I end up doing after I'm done with this delivery, and then get it down there and make my delivery too. So I don't know what I'll be doing yet for a reload. It's pretty common when I come into California. I don't know what I'm doing until I'm already empty or close to that time. Other areas that we do, a lot of times I already know what I'm doing before I even make the delivery. It's just California, we just have so much freight that goes in and out of here with us. So our planners who handle the California area, they just bombarded a lot of times with stuff to plan on trucks at times. And I know I've heard a couple of times people have had to sit for an extra day or whatever waiting for loads. So won't hurt my feelings if I end up sitting a day. So I don't really care. I got 2308 left on my clock, on my 70, and I got 2 days in a row of no recaps at all coming in. And then I get 650 back, so I got a couple of not so great recaps coming back. 755, 2 days in a row. But yeah, we'll see. Might end up reloading and running off recaps. 23 hours is plenty to work with for a couple of days. That's 11.5 hours, so getting closer to 12 hours. 11.5 for the next 2 days, and that's plenty for an entire shift. Maybe a chance for a little home time. Yeah, possibly. So depending on what time I empty tomorrow, and I will have to get the trailer washed out after I'm empty. Well, I'd have to take a wild guess. They'll probably reload me in Colton tomorrow afternoon or something. But I don't know. We'll see. Then Colton's been running behind on pickups, and that's assuming I even go there for my reload. See what happens sometime tomorrow, I guess. But all right. So anyway, yeah, this is pretty much my favorite spot to park at when I'm here in town. I don't like to park over at Flying J or other truck stops here. I'm not against it. I just have a preference for here because it's roomy. Got Del Taco right here. Got Fat Burger right there next to it. Fat Burger, I think it's Jimmy John's or Jersey Mike's. Yeah, Jersey Mike's subs. What else is up? Burger, Panda Express, Denny's, IHOP, all right here, right in front of me. And then across the street, got the Habit Burgers. That's a good burger joint. If any of you guys ever come into California or other areas where Habit is actually expanding into, if you like burgers, it's worth checking out. You know, a lot of stuff here as far as food options. That's why I like it, and yeah, especially if we end up, she and I want to meet up or something for breakfast or something. There's plenty here we can look at. Obviously, you can't eat in now with this COVID-19 bullshit, but whatever. All right, so yeah, we already did the cake for my daughter last week because we weren't expecting that I would be here this week, so we kind of at least did the cake and, you know, or the cake celebration part of it last week, and yeah, of course, I'm gonna be hooking her up, I'm sure. Thanks. Now I'm hungry and everything is. Hey, what do you? I can make you more hungry and tell you more of the stuff that's over here. A lot of it's fast food, but and that's what Barstow is mostly about, is trucking, you know, catering to the trucks that come in and out of town, and then to people who are basically travelers of any kind. Yeah, it's everybody from LA, Orange County, San Diego County, whatever. They all call Barstow the pit stop on the way to Vegas. If you ever come through here on a Friday night, or even worse, on a Sunday afternoon, you'll know exactly what I mean. This place is a freaking madhouse on Friday evenings, and Friday nights, and Sunday afternoon and evening on a typical weekend. Busy, busy, busy. And it's even worse on special days like New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving, Memorial Day, you know, certain holidays where people like to go out more. It's busy. It's a crowd. In fact, I stay the hell away from this area here if I can on those kind of days. You've been through Barstow. All right. How long ago was that? I-80, only 4 miles from me, everything 24/7 on there. Way back in the 80s. Okay. Yeah, and it was busy then too, because the McDonald's right on the other side of the freeway from here. I used to work at that McDonald's. Yeah, when I was younger, right? When I was in high school, and then again after I was a college dropout. Stupid me decided I'd rather work and make money than go to my college classes and get good grades. So yeah, it didn't work out too well. That's part of what led to me getting into the military too. So all right, I'm gonna go ahead and end this, and maybe try to get me some rest, so when she gets up in the morning I can be ready for it. So alright, not to mention I'm tired. 2012 last time I was at Irwin. Okay, it wasn't too long ago, 8 years. But alright guys, yeah, about 11:30 Pacific time tomorrow, or I mean today now. Even for West Coast, it's already what, Wednesday. So yeah, about 11:30 Pacific time, somewhere in that ballpark, I'll be back on duty, and I'll go ahead and stream that. It's not that far a drive, probably. I might only stream a couple hours, but at least it's something for you guys. So we'll see you all then, okay? Have a good night, all.